We did this a little while ago with Training Peaks, and we're redoing it. Our audio got really kind of messed up somehow in the downloading process, or the live version seemed to be okay, but we had some other problems with audio. So we're going to run through this again with everyone because we've had some complaints about it, and I want to make sure that you can go back and check everything out, and free to put some questions down in the comments area. I'll try to answer those. So moving along, what is race execution? Okay, and we hear a lot about people saying, I don't have the speed for shorter races, or I can't train enough to do the longer races. And race day is all about execution. Okay, race day is about using what you have on that day to get from point A to point B. Simple as that. We're not going to talk about training or nutrition too much here, but on race day, all the training is done. Okay, if you want to be a fit, dynamic triathlete, that's going to encompass a bunch of different things. Whatever race you're doing comes down to assessing what you have on that day and using it properly to get through whatever duration, whatever distance race that you're dealing with. Okay, we're going to talk a lot about control. Okay, what can you do and what can you not do? This is something that a lot of athletes miss. They don't know what is unreasonable. Okay, so we're going to talk some about that. Picking your battles. This is something that we see a lot of athletes do, especially the more competitive ones. They start trying to race every single person out there at every single moment, and that can get a little overwhelming, a little bit too much for you very quickly. And even for those athletes, it's really you against yourself. It's your race. It's you against the clock. So you have to really kind of pick your moments to when you want to race another person and cue off of other people. You really need to kind of stay within yourself and know what the parameters are, know what your window of pacing is in terms of what you can do and what you cannot do, right? So this is a big important one. This is the EK Endurance Coaching Training Pyramid. Okay, we're not going to talk too much about training, but I want to make sure you have a baseline because we are going to talk about two things quite a bit. We're going to go back and forth between, and you can see here the two things we're going to talk about is your threshold, pace, and power. Okay, this is the numbers part of training and racing. This is the science part here. And then what I call proving it in training. So this is where, how much volume have you done, right? How many times have you done that long ride or long run? Practicing that race pace, practicing your race execution. A lot of people do the proving it in training part. They go out, they train hard, they pay attention to how fast they can run, how fast they can go on the bike, and then they go race. They don't ever start with the science. They don't ever use the science part to it. And it's funny, I meet a lot of really fit people that train real hard and pay attention to their training, and they tell me how hard they want to do the bike or how fast they want to run on race day, and the first thing I ask them is, what's your threshold pace? What's your threshold power? And sometimes they don't know. And when they do and they tell me, it's clear that they don't know what is unreasonable, right? What can they not do? So often the science aspect of race execution is missed, and if it's not missed, it's used incorrectly. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well here, specifically for each sport, for the swim, the bike, and the run. To it here. So for a lot of people, you have this aspect, you can't win, but you can definitely lose the swim. And whether you're a top athlete or just kind of hoping to finish your first Ironman, you're talking about a lot of effort here with very little gain on your day. So there can be a lot of distractions in the swim. It's mass start in the big long distance. So be prepared for crowded start, use the crowd. Don't panic, don't freak out. Everyone is dealing with the same thing, and nobody wants to have contact. Everybody wants to swim in clear water. So everyone's correcting and overcorrecting, bumping back and forth into people on the left and the right. Just stay relaxed, keep your head down, and keep moving. It will thin out, okay? Use that crowd to your advantage. While it might seem like you can never get in a couple of strokes in a row that are complete, realize when there's that many people out there and there's that much of water moving, there is a ton of draft there. The picture in the background here is of Ironman Canada, the real Ironman Canada, the one in Penticton. Not owned by Ironman anymore, but this is a very, very wide swim start. And if you're lucky enough to have really calm water, like there was this year when this picture was taken, you've got a lot of people in front of you, plenty of room to swim, lots of drafting opportunity, and not a lot of contact. Very, very fast swim times that year. Zero kick for the swim. Okay, most of the time you're going to be wearing a wetsuit. As triathletes, we got, our legs are for the bulk of the racing. Really try to keep them quiet, okay? The second half of the swim, this is a big thing I talk about when I coach swimming, and we also talk about it in race execution. When you get into the second half of that swim, when you start getting tired, refocus on your technique, okay? This isn't the time to get tough and start trying to crank away and try to go faster and build up any lactate or build up any excess fatigue. Refocus on that technique. That's the main thing that's going to slow you down, or hopefully not slow you down. There's a bunch of 2-loop courses out there with varying distances of running on the beach or in between the loop. Don't run, okay? Slow jog at best, okay? Even if you're a contender. All the blood's in your upper body. I've seen people come out of these 2-loop swims on the first loop and start running and fall over. So just jog through there, get some deep breaths, okay? Refocus for that second half. Last 5 minutes of the swim, we like to start kicking a little bit more. Keep that overall effort the same. Don't start sprinting to the finish. Just start moving the legs around, start to get some blood in there. This is going to help you transition better for the bike. Pace. Try to get this, practice this in training. Do a 30-minute steady swim in the pool. If you can do some accurately measured open water swims, that's also great to see how you perform in open water. We like to do 3 to 5 seconds slower per 100 than your threshold pace. So if your threshold pace, if you do 1,000 yards or 1,000 meters, and your average pace for that threshold test or threshold effort is a 1:30 minute 30 seconds per 100. Generally, we would like to have people swim, 3 to 5 seconds slower per 100 a day. So when you're in the pool and you're thinking, how fast am I going to swim? That's how fast you're going to swim. And if you really want to get a feel for if that's possible or not, you're going to have to do a steady effort that's over 20 minutes long. Okay, doing a 500 repeated hundreds just isn't going to give you the feel for a steady swim. So open water is great. Measuring it accurately can be an issue. Try and do something long and steady in the pool if you can. And if you don't have anyone to count for, if you're like me and you have a big problem counting in the pool, just take some random hundreds. Keep track of a clock so you know how long to swim for, and then just randomly check your time for 100 here and there after you've been in there for 5 or 10 minutes of solid pacing, solid swimming. That's a best way to do it would be to have somebody count or have you count every single 100, but that might not be reasonable. So there's the swim. Moving on to the bike here for you. Got 2 slides. The bike is the most dynamic part of the race, so you better be good. Not the best adjective I've ever used there. And what this really means is that the bike is the longest part of the race, okay? and you go through the widest range of intensities. You're going to be coasting, not doing anything. You're going to be riding uphill at a higher intensity than you'd like, especially if it's steep. You're going to be at low cadences. You're going to be at high cadences. You're going to be down in your aero bars, up on the bullhorns. You have to eat, drink, go through feed zones. You really, really have to be comfortable on the bike. So put in the time here. Put in the different types of training. Don't just go out and do the same thing all the time. Okay, make sure that you are super comfortable on the bike, right? Basic maintenance, changing a flat tire, all that stuff. You better be comfortable doing that. Okay. And always the thing that we hear with the bike is, the big question in triathlon is how hard can you go and still run well, still run within the parameters that you should be running. Running well does not mean running fast, okay? Running fast is going to be defined differently depending on who you talk to. So again, when we get to the run here, we're going to have, you should have a range that says, on the best case scenario, I should be able to run around this pace. So what does that mean for the bike, okay? And this is how we can kind of adapt the science part to, does this really work in training for me? Every athlete's a little bit different. Okay, we've got specific power guidelines, specific power outputs for iron distance races, which we'll talk about in the next slide a little bit more specifically. Another thing that you really need to take into consideration with something as long as an Ironman or even a half distance race is the slower you are, for whatever reason, if the course is really difficult, or if you're just on the heavier side, or if you're just not one of the super strong cyclists, the longer it takes you, the easier then you need to go. Okay? One of the reasons why Chris Lieto is so fast on the bike is because he's only out there riding for 4 hours and 20 minutes. So normal people who are riding 5.5 hours, 6.5 hours, they're on the bike for hours longer than him. So they need to actually go easier. So if you think about this, it's kind of a double-edged sword where the slower you happen to be, the easier you need to go. The easier you need to ride for you, which is going to make that bike last even longer. Okay? 6 hours is a common breaking point. You might hear there's a lot of different info out there about how hard to ride in Ironman, and you might have heard 70%, right? 70% of your threshold power, right? 70% of your lactate threshold power on the bike for an Ironman. Okay, well that's great, but for who? Is it going to take you 5 hours to do the bike, or is it going to take you 6.5? If you're a 6.5 person compared to a 5-hour person, you're going to need to adjust that accordingly. This is where that proving it in training comes into play. This last year at Ironman St. George, there was a lot of people there who were planning on riding 5 hours, 5.5 hours, and because of the extreme wind, we had 40-mile-an-hour winds all day long. The bike is already very hilly, very challenging bike course, and it was taking a lot of those people, those qualifying, those fast qualifying athletes, 6 hours or more to do the bike. And if they didn't realize that and adjust, then we're looking at kind of a disaster run ahead of you. And there was a lot of that happening. There was a lot of walking going on up high in the race, up towards the front end of the race on the last lap there of the run. Fueling plan. Your fueling plan should fit together with the course and your plan of attack. Okay, so we want to eat on the easy sections. All right, we don't want to be thinking, oh goodness, I need to eat and drink here in the middle of a long climb. The easy sections, we want to stay aero, right? We can relax more, but we want to pay attention to staying aero while the speeds are high. When we're on a climb, we don't have to eat because we've already done that earlier on an easy section. We can get out of the saddle. We can sit up on the bullhorns a little bit more. We don't have to be so aerodynamic, but we need to pay attention to our pacing. We really want to stay on the pedals and ride steady. Okay. So a little bit more specifics here. So we talk a little bit about average power, that average effort, but how do you go about getting that power? This is kind of the more important part of it. So some real details here for some of you number gurus out there, and even some just if you're not using power, some basic things that you can think of. The first hour should be easy. Okay, 5 to 10% lower watts, 30% lower effort. Why 30% lower effort? That's a lot. Well, it's because when you are peaked on race day and you get out of the water and there's crowds and everyone else around you is riding so hard, it is going to feel like you are barely pedaling. And even despite that, you're still probably going to be going too hard. I say 5 to 10% lower watts. You're probably looking at more like 3 to 5% lower watts. Still, you're going to go out too hard. I know a coach that says doesn't even try necessarily to get people to temper that effort in the beginning. He just tells people to try to relax and kind of go with the flow and let that power come down a little bit in that first 20 minutes, half hour. You're so excited, it's going to be hard to control that effort. That's reasonable, but you don't want to be going too hard, and you don't want to be going too hard for too long. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Riding 5% higher than you should might not be that big of a deal, but if you do it for 2 hours, now that can become a big problem. We want to ride steady and strong, okay, not hard on the tough sections. You need to think of this in terms of what's your return on investment for your effort. So the way we define hard sections are they're hard because of the wind or hills, also very long. So for example, here, a hill that's a steep hill, like a 10% grade hill, but it's only 200-300 meters long, that's not hard. That's just a nuisance. That's just an opportunity for you to ride way too hard and build up lactate and burn glycogen. Okay? A section of the course that's 20 miles long and has a lot of uphill and is going to take you 90 minutes, 2 hours or more to ride, that's a hard section of the course. Okay? That's where we want to ride steady and strong. That is the place where you want to be thinking of riding. That's where you want to take the liquid calories in, or just water. That's where you want to be on the pedals every single pedal stroke. That's where you're going to put time. That's how you're going to make up ground. Okay? Not on a hill that takes you 2 minutes to get up. That's not going to do you any good. Okay? There's a race out here in Boulder, Colorado that we do every year, the Boulder Peak. It's an Olympic distance, and there's a really steep climb in the middle of it. And everyone always goes way too hard and kind of blows their race on the steep section of the hill. Well, the steep section only takes 3 to 5 minutes to get over. And the bike is an hour or more. It's over an hour. So even for the pros, it's a 42-kilometer bike. It's a little bit long for an Olympic. And you add that hill in there, so you got an hour of riding, and everyone thinks about the hard 3-minute section. Not a hard section. It's annoying. It's tough. But again, you're not going to get a lot of return on investment on going hard on a short section. So think in terms of how long each section is going to take you. Energy conservation. Coast on every downhill that you can. So we talk about making a mile per hour rule. 25 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour. In other words, if you get going fast enough for whatever reason where you go 28, 30 miles an hour, then coast. Okay? Just save the energy for the run. All right? Wind resistance increases on you exponentially. So when you're flying downhill or a real fast section of road, it doesn't have a big return on investment to start putting 20 or 30 more watts into it to go 1 extra mile an hour. Just save it for the run. There's a lot more racing to do. Some specifics. We want to go above threshold power, okay, for even a second if we can. I have 20 seconds here, and we don't even want to ride in that zone 4, in that threshold zone, for anything longer than absolutely necessary. The above threshold time builds up lactate on the muscles, causes muscle damage. It's going to make you go slower in the long run, especially if you do too much of it. And even riding in zone 4, you're talking about creating a lot of muscle fatigue. And even if you can handle the muscle fatigue that is going to generate, when you're at threshold, you're burning 100% glycogen. So that's burning a lot of glycogen, a lot of sugar that your body needs for the race. To operate well, your body needs both fat and glycogen. Even when you're at a low intensity, you still need some sugar to burn. Okay, if you don't have any sugar, you're just burning fat. That's being bonked, and a lot. It's happened to almost all of us. You don't want to have that to happen to you on the run in an Ironman. So riding at threshold on the bike burns glycogen, and it's real hard to, when you start burning 100% glycogen and you're working at an intensity that's 1,000 calories an hour, that's just wasteful. Okay, you're just burning gas that you need for later in the day. So there's a couple of negative things that go on when you go that hard. Second half of the bike, we want to aim for the same wattage or a little bit better than the first half. So the best way to really go about it is have a very slight kind of negative split, very slight build in power on the bike. So riding perfectly steady is great. We generally like to take the first 5 or 10 minutes really easy on the bike, and again in the last 5 or 10 minutes very easy. This helps your body transition from the different sports, especially coming from the swim. Let that blood get into the legs, let your body adapt and realize it's on the bike, and also let your stomach empty. This last 10 minutes, no food, no nutrition, just water if anything, lower effort, spend some time out of the saddle, okay? Let your stomach empty, make it that much easier for your body to transition between the bike and the run, okay? On to the run here. We have specific guidelines for our athletes. Generally, depending on, again, how long the run is going to take you, how long the whole race is going to take you, we like to have people run anywhere between the fast end of zone 1, pace-wise, and the middle of zone 2. Okay, zone 4 being threshold, that lactate threshold pace. Tempo, zone 3 being the one below, zone 2 being that endurance zone, zone 1 being a little bit slower. Generally like to have people run top of zone 1, fast end of zone 1, up to about the middle of zone 2. The person in this picture, a friend of mine, is one of the best runners I've ever met. He's a phenomenal runner. He's been to Hawaii Ironman World Championships many times, and he runs about a 3-hour marathon there. He runs up towards the top end of his zone 2. And he's a little bit of an outside. He's one of the exceptions, I think, to the rule. But again, he's still, if someone says, yeah, I'm going to run tempo, they either don't understand technology or they're sadly mistaken. So we use a particular pace chart. It's similar to a VDOT chart. A lot of people know what that is, so you can check that out in terms of how to set up your zones. We use the one we use the PZI 10 chart that I modify a little bit in Training Peaks. So all these zones you can do in Training Peaks. Definitely get those set up for pace and power and heart rate. Run your race pace in training, okay? Again, this has to work in the real world. Start with the science. Start with that lactate threshold pace first. Know where your zones are, that range for threshold, that range for zone 2, zone 3, etc. And then do that in the real world. Do those long runs at your race pace, right? Do those brick runs at your race pace. Make sure that it's reasonable, okay? On race day, that first feels super easy. Should feel like you're holding back, just kind of shuffle along, and While the task mentally may still be pretty daunting to you as to what you're doing, this should be pretty encouraging at this point because you should be running easy. Should feel easy. Even if that fatigue is starting to creep in, you should be like, wow, I'm running really slow. This feels slow. In the longer distance races, as opposed to the shorter distance races that you may have already done, coming off the bike in a sprint, triathlon, or an Olympic distance and trying to hit the pace that you should run is very difficult. It's a really, really hard effort to jump off the bike and start running at that pace. It's quite easy. A lot of athletes find themselves running too fast in the longer races. So get a pace watch. Use it on race day. It is the best investment you can make. They're not that expensive. Get yourself a GPS watch. Not one of those foot pod things. Those cause more problems, it seems. But get yourself a good watch. Make sure you know how to use it. And use it on race day. I stick in my shoe. I grab it, get it started as I'm running out of transition, and it's got my pace in no time. Okay, don't go faster on downhills to try to make up time. Okay, going a little bit faster, 5 or 10 seconds per mile faster, that's okay. 30 plus seconds a mile, that's you're gonna pay for that later. Okay, and again we go back to making a mistake. Don't want to make big errors in pacing like this, but we also don't want to make small errors for a really long period of time. Last year I did Ironman Lake Placid. Probably the biggest mistake I made all day. The first 6 miles is stair step downhill, and I ran about 20-25 seconds per mile too fast, faster than my goal race pace. And a lot of people will say, well, it's mostly downhill, so you will run faster. And while that's true, I think I ran a little bit too fast, and I did it for 5 or 6 miles. That's running too fast for far too long. If you do 1 or 2 miles here or there that are nice, kind of steep enough downhill where you end up running that much faster, that might be okay. But when you string 6 miles together, running 20-30 seconds a mile faster than your goal race pace, that's probably going to be a negative. It's probably going to slow you down more than you've gained. So be careful with that. Walk the aid stations before you have to, okay? Make this quick. Don't get comfortable. Stopping in the second half of a run feels terrific, and it's incredibly difficult to get going. So generally when we have athletes that are going to run 9-minute miles or slower, I generally, a protocol that we kind of start with and we practice in training is do the first couple of miles steady and get your rhythm, and then walk through the aid stations as you think you need to in that first half. And then as you get into that second half, last 6 miles, that's where I like to have people try to stay steady and not stop, because sometimes restarting can be worse, or sometimes not even possible. So again, conserve energy early, just like on the bike, and then build into a steady pace. Okay. Cool off before you have to. Stay comfortable. This goes with nutrition too. And we're not, I said we weren't going to talk a lot about this, but you want to take care of issues before they get to be a problem. Okay. If you know it's going to be 85 and sunny, then you need to stay hydrated. You need to get the ice sponges on your head, ice down the jersey, down the pants, whatever. Do that before you get too hot. If you get hot and thirsty on the run, it's too late. You're going to be walking, okay? Focus on your form as you get really tired. Don't get sloppy. Don't start scuffing your feet, okay? Just focus on that technique, just like we talked about with the swim, all right? And don't slow down. If you can do an Ironman run at a steady pace without slowing down, you're going fast. That's what fast is in an Ironman. I tell that to people all the time. The way to go fast in an Ironman is to, first of all, not stop. Okay, if you cannot stop. And then second, if you cannot slow down. That's how you go fast in an Ironman. Not by going up a 300 meter hill on the bike real hard. Lastly, here are some overall thoughts. Full distance and the half distance triathlon racing. is about not slowing down, okay? Not slowing down is fast. Going hard is stupid, okay? And I hear this all the time. Oh, I have a weak run, so I'm going to crush the bike. Well, now you've really made your run weak. You've just self-sabotaged your entire race, okay? Start with the science. Prove it in training. Focus on where you are now and then where you are headed. Plan to be prepared for the next battle. This is the best piece. If you only take one thing out of this for any race execution, is this. And the example here is I'm on an easy flat section of road. I am going to eat and drink now because there is a hill coming up and I want to have to eat and drink on the hill. It's 20-30 minutes long. There's an aid station on it. I want to make sure that I get water at that aid station, and so I'm going to drink now so I don't grab a bottle and have nowhere to put it because my other water bottles are full. I've seen this so many times, people coming up to an aid station and they don't know what to do. And they're looking around and reaching in their pockets because they haven't planned ahead. Okay? Same thing with long climbs. I've seen people like trying to open, energy bar wrappers and gel wrappers on long climbs. You've known this climb was here. You've been signed up for this race for a year. Okay? Have this stuff planned ahead. Okay? Think about what you're doing right now at this point in time. I am pedaling this hard for a specific reason. I am coasting right now for a specific reason. Okay, etc. Know what you can and cannot do on race day. You have to know where that line is. You have to know that I cannot do this on race day. Okay, if you've never done, 90 minutes of tempo, 90 minutes total of zone 3 on a simulation ride or a long ride before in training, or you've done it only to crack later, don't expect anything else on race day. Okay? Be safe, especially on the bike. Look ahead. Avoid mishaps. Stay to the right, but don't ride in the gutter over near the grass. Okay? Watch the other riders. Give up 30 seconds here and there so you don't have to stop for 10 minutes because of a crash or a flat tire or something crazy. Okay? Long term. We've got a 10, 11, 12-hour day. Even if you're really fast, you're looking at 9 hours of racing. Giving up a couple of 30 seconds here or there to be safe, it's worth it. Take your time making decisions. The last 6-10 miles of the run, you're going to be working so slow. It's going to be so hard to do the most common things, to grab water. Your hands aren't going to work right. Give yourself the time that you need, okay? You're going to go through tough times. Tougher, smarter, and you'll get through them, okay? They'll likely pass. Don't be distracted. Be the distraction. This was great advice I got from probably one of the best coaches I've ever had back in my rowing days. What does this mean for you? What does this mean for your everyday, just trying to finish my first race? It means don't worry about what other people are doing. Focus on yourself, okay? Stay self-focused. Focus on what you're doing. Keep it simple. Your transitions, your fueling, your clothing, everything. Simple is lighter. It's less to forget. It's less to go wrong. It's less stuff to carry, to drop, to break. Okay, just keep things as simple as possible. Don't get overwhelmed with all the gadgets and all the gels and pills and all this kind of stuff. Figure out what you need. Don't bring anything more. Okay. Okay, hopefully this one has worked out a little bit better for you guys. Feel free to ask some questions in the comments section here. We'll see how that goes, and I can try to get back to some people. Or you can also hit us up. There's a link to our Facebook page and our email on the website at ekendurancecoaching.com. So feel free to like our Facebook page, and you can ask questions there as well. Thanks for joining in. Hopefully this one's better. Sorry for the delay and the bad audio on the last one. See you soon.